The United States Supreme Court is the nation's final legal authority, interpreting the Constitution and laws passed by Congress. Its decisions shape the country for generations, especially on fundamental powers like taxation and commerce. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the authority to tax and regulate trade, ensuring no single person controls the economy. Tariffs, a type of tax on imported goods, are a key tool in trade policy and foreign relations. Traditionally, only Congress can impose tariffs, maintaining a balance of power. This balance was tested in a major legal battle involving President Donald Trump's use of tariffs. The Supreme Court faced a profound question. Did the president overstep his authority by using emergency powers to impose tariffs, a power reserved for Congress? The case was about more than taxes. It was about the limits of executive power. The outcome would clarify how much authority a president has to act alone, especially in times of crisis. The decision would impact the American economy and the future of presidential power. It forced a national conversation about the roles of each branch of government. The Constitution's checks and balances are designed to prevent any branch, including the presidency, from becoming too powerful. The Supreme Court's ruling would define the modern boundaries of executive authority in global trade. President Trump made trade policy central to his America First agenda, arguing that unfair foreign practices hurt U.S. industries. He imposed sweeping tariffs on imports from allies and rivals alike, aiming to protect American jobs and force better trade deals. To bypass Congress, Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, a law meant for national emergencies. IEEPA was designed for targeted crises, not broad economic policy. The administration declared unfair trade a national emergency, justifying the tariffs under IEEPA. Critics argued this stretched the law's intent and bypassed Congress's constitutional authority over taxes and trade. Legal experts warned this was one of the largest tax hikes in history, without congressional approval. The tariffs generated $165 billion in revenue, but raised costs for American businesses and consumers. Some industries felt protected, but many struggled with higher prices and uncertainty. The stage was set for a major legal showdown over the limits of presidential power. Lawsuits quickly challenged Trump's tariffs, arguing the president exceeded his authority under IEEPA. Businesses claimed only Congress can set taxes and regulate commerce, and that no true emergency justified the tariffs. Lower courts sided with the challengers, ruling the tariffs an unlawful use of executive power. The Court of International Trade and the Federal Circuit both found the administration's actions unconstitutional. To avoid market chaos, the appeals court delayed its ruling, giving the government time to appeal. The Trump administration took the case to the Supreme Court, seeking to overturn the lower courts. The court agreed to hear the case, recognizing its significance for the separation of powers and U.S. trade policy. Billions of dollars and a core constitutional principle hung in the balance. The Trump administration defended the tariffs as necessary for national security and economic fairness. They argued decades of unbalanced trade weakened U.S. industry, justifying emergency action under IEEPA. Supporters pointed to new trade deals and investments as proof of success, warning that removing tariffs would harm the economy. Opponents, including legal scholars and businesses, called the tariffs an unconstitutional abuse of power. They argued only Congress can impose taxes and regulate trade, and IEEPA was never meant for ongoing economic issues. The tariffs, they said, acted as a tax on American companies and consumers, raising costs and hurting the broader economy. Critics insisted trade policy should be debated in Congress, not dictated by emergency declarations. The case became a test of constitutional limits and the proper balance between executive action and legislative authority. The Supreme Court had to decide emergency power or congressional prerogative. On October 7, 2025, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Trump's use of IEEPA for broad tariffs was unconstitutional. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while the president has foreign affairs authority, the power to tax and regulate trade belongs to Congress. The court found that national emergency and IEEPA cannot be stretched to cover long-term economic disputes. Allowing such a broad reading would give the president unchecked power over trade and taxes. The majority included 2 Trump appointees, signaling a commitment to legal principle over politics. The dissent argued the president needs flexibility in emergencies, and that the court was overreaching. The ruling was a major reassertion of the separation of powers, limiting executive authority. It reinforced Congress's primary role in economic policy. The decision was seen as a defining moment for the Roberts Court and the constitutional order. The Supreme Court's decision triggered immediate economic and political effects. The government was ordered to refund up to $150 billion in tariffs, providing relief to thousands of businesses. For many, this meant new opportunities for investment and growth. The administration sospetraks den aids an sokkekwakkerpijn tried. Administration was upended, forcing a return to more traditional, slower legislative processes. The ruling set a clear limit on presidential use of emergency powers in economic policy. Supporters of congressional authority hailed it as a vital check on executive overreach. For consumers, the end of tariffs promised lower prices on many goods. Economists predicted the refunds and price drops would stimulate the economy. The decision moved U.S. trade policy back towards stability and predictability. Future presidents would have to respect Congress's role in shaping economic policy. The ruling came amid deep partisan divides and skepticism about the court's neutrality. Many expected the conservative majority court to side with Trump, but the cross-ideological majority defied those expectations. The decision was widely seen as an effort to protect the court's legitimacy and independence. Public reaction was mixed, but the ruling forced Americans to focus on constitutional principles, not just politics. The case reaffirmed the court's role as a guardian of checks and balances. By reasserting Congress's authority, the court reshaped U.S. trade policy and presidential power. The decision became a landmark moment for the Roberts Court. In a divided nation, it stood as a reminder that constitutional limits endure, even in turbulent times.